Hi everybody, Mike Avelar from Avelar Home Inspection Inc. And today I am going to be helping you understand building science and the building envelopes and the different systems that go together into building what is known as the building envelope and how we protect ourselves from the exterior environments. I'm going to start off with what is building science. It's a collection of knowledge that focuses on analyzing and controlling physical phenomenon, and it's specifically the study of material science, thermodynamics, hydrodynamics, fluids, architecture, engineering, construction science. It's really the study of structure, construction, safety, maintenance, and more recently, energy efficiency. To do this, we break down the house into various systems, components, and items such as chimneys, insulation, ventilation, roofing, drainage, windows, exteriors, doors, structure, electrical, plumbing, interior, heating, air conditioning, and foundation systems. Specifically studies these three major factors: heat, air, and moisture. Now, heat, we have to take into consideration things like resisting heat and how heat affects the building. We have to take into consideration how are we going to control the temperature inside the building. Airflow is very important to control inside of our buildings and to understand how the airflow affects our buildings from the outside and inside. We have to understand that airflow and ventilation of the interior is very important. Moisture, the number one enemy of any structure anywhere, is moisture. We have to make sure that the walls on the exterior resist water and moisture, and we have to again control the interior environment of the building. Since the dawn of humankind, we've tried to make life living easier and comfortable by building something to live in, to protect us from the outside environments and to have an inside environment that is more comfortable and more to our likings as a species. Buildings are environmental separators, creating a building envelope to regulate interior environment. Besides providing shelter, they also provide space for community gatherings, places to increase various knowledges, and also to commemorate our past. What factors affect this environment we've created? These are things out of our controls, like wind and rain and sun. But that's okay, because there are some things that we can control. Inside the home, we can effectively control the airflow, the heating and cooling, and lighting. The building envelope is a combination of systems that provide the separation between the inside of the home and the outside of the home. Roof, walls, including the exterior and interior wall coverings, insulation, foundation, windows, and doors. Now remember those three major factors we mentioned before: heat, air, and moisture. These three things are also what is most responsible for the deterioration of building materials. All of these factors add energy to the building, but this energy works against our efforts to control the interior environment. Not only that, the effects are exponential and synergetic in nature. That means the effects grow quickly and they love interacting with each other. This is kind of like the you find a penny and you double it every day kind of effect. So here are some examples. When asphalt shingles heats up, their degradation increases. They dry out and become more brittle. They have granule loss. When your exterior wall coverings heat up, paint, primer, caulking, and peeling will start to occur. There's going to be degradation in all of those. Increased differential movement in masonry. So what will happen is that Some part of the masonry on the outside may be getting exposed to sunlight, while right beside it, it's being exposed to shade. So there's two different thermal variations there in the wall, which can lead to minor cracks and deterioration of the mortar. Degradation of vinyl siding. Toss in some moisture, and we get increased speeds of degradation and increased biological organism growth, like mold, wood rot, and such. For every 20% increase in ultraviolet radiation, there is a 50% decrease in the life of most building materials. Water and moisture is the most harmful, damaging factor to buildings. Buildings will retain water and moisture at different rates depending on materials involved. The building envelope needs a drying period, which is usually done in the winter, not the summer months. How do we maintain the temperature inside the building? It's maintained by two factors: the HVAC system and how well the building keeps the inside and the outside separated. These two factors work in concert to control the environment inside a building. The airflow inside and outside and the moisture levels affect the heating of the building. Let's talk about heat loss. Air leakage is the most common source of heat loss. However, we lose a percentage from the attic and roof space, which is pretty easy fix. We have exterior walls. These can be tricky to insulate or to shore up with more insulation. Basements and even more with crawl spaces. Windows and doors, which are usually easy to fix. High quality windows and doors will provide a higher R factor. Something also to note is that the more airtight a home is, the more problem you face with proper air exchange and ventilation. This can be helped by installing an HRV. With heat loss, there's this phenomenon that happens that's called the stack effect. Air flows from high pressure areas to low pressure areas. In homes, generally speaking, the crawl space and basement are cooler, which is a higher air pressure, and the ceilings and attics are warmer, which is a lower air pressure. Air flows in at the bottom of the house and then out the top. Warmer air carries moisture dissolved in the air. As the cooler air rises and it absorbs the warmth, it also absorbs the moisture. So now the air has heat and moisture in it. This brings us to what's called hydric buffer capacity. This is the capacity of building materials' ability to store water. Most materials will retain some moisture, and this is all right as long as it's not exceeding the maximum capacity. The building materials are the buffer between the inside and the outside. Different materials have different hydric buffer capacities. This is how much moisture they can hold. The exterior wall coverings will determine how much can be absorbed before the hydric buffer is saturated and deterioration begins. For example, a 2,000 square foot building that has masonry walls will hold about 2,273 liters. Wood siding and framing and sheathing is about 227 liters. Metal siding with wood framing and gypsum sheathing will hold about 22 liters. Drying happens differently in different places. In hot, dry areas, typically have a low moisture level and low drying needs. In hot, humid areas with high moisture levels and high drying needs. For example, here in Ottawa, we have very hot, humid summers, and if we're lucky, we have dry, arid winters. So our homes are drying out in the wintertime. Marine areas have a high and very drying needs because they are by the ocean. Cold areas with medium moisture levels and very cold areas with low moisture levels have variable temperatures and variable rate needs. But drying doesn't always require heat. Keep this in mind. Sunlight dries, but it also heats the brick, which causes moisture to migrate inwards. Rain, drawn by capillary action, also migrates inwards. Wind drives the rain, but can also create a pressure difference when together with humidity creates a vapor pressure gradient, which can further cause moisture migration. Air gaps can slow this moisture movement down. Sometimes heat and sun can actually slow drying down. Drying can occur more efficiently in cold and very cold areas. We have to build buildings that use materials best suited for each area. Let's talk about vapor barriers. What are they? What do they do? They're used to control the flow of moisture into the building envelope. Moisture can be a vapor, humidity, or liquid. Modern construction has something called house wrap. House wrap lets moisture through but stops liquid water and air from penetrating the inside of the home. Different types of house wraps have different types of properties. Older homes used to be built with something called building paper, but it had a lot of seams and would compromise the envelope regardless. There are three different types of vapor barriers: impermeable, semi-permeable, and permeable. Moisture moves through building materials in three different ways: capillary action, air, and vapor diffusion. Vapor diffusion falls under the second law of thermodynamics. Moisture will flow across a concentration gradient as a heat gradient, and more flows to less. Proper control of moisture usually requires both an air barrier, a house wrap, and a vapor barrier. Uncontrolled infiltration into the building because of poor air barriers can lead to significant damage. In different areas, the requirements for vapor barriers are different. They have to be installed for the type of climate. In cold areas, we have to make it as difficult as possible for the building materials not to get wet from inside. For example, a plumbing leak. The air and vapor barriers both go on the interior and the exterior of the walls. A permeable vapor installed on the exterior will allow it to dry to the outside. In hot, humid areas, we have to make it as hard as possible for the building materials to get wet from the outside. So that includes rain, humidity, and marine type landscapes. The air and vapor barriers are installed on the exterior to let building materials dry to the inside of the home. Also, these buildings need to have a positive pressure with dehumidification, such as an air conditioner. In mixed climates, like here in Ottawa, it's a little complicated. Flow-through approach: use permeable or semi-permeable materials on the interior and exterior, requires both air pressure control and interior humidity control. Install vapor barriers in the approximate middle of the wall with insulated sheeting on the exterior. Air barriers can be either towards the interior or the exterior. Air pressure and humidity control must be utilized. Humidity flows inward in the warm summer months. This has to be stopped at the exterior or at the sheathing. Humidity flows outwards in the cold, dry months. This must be stopped at the interior walls. Both air and vapor barriers should be employed. Wood rot, mold spores, will activate when the moisture content raises to about 19 to 20%. To prevent mold and accelerated deterioration of materials, the moisture content must be kept below 16%. Even with low indoor humidity levels, cold weather causes condensation, which increases moisture content in small areas, usually around doors and windows and any weak areas of the envelope. Now, we know we have to protect the home from water, rain, but most importantly, humidity, which is actually water vapor. Water in the form of vapor has a much greater effect on the building and the building materials than liquid. Moisture. Wood framing is still very common. When wood gets wet, it gets wider, but not longer. When it dries out, it gets slimmer, not shorter. But people have always been very creative and they want to control as much as possible. So we created manufactured wood products to try and reduce that. They use techniques like cross graining or fiber orientation. They use different types of resins and waterproofing materials. However, they tend to expand in all directions instead of just one. This expansion and contraction will cause a separation and let water vapor, to move through the gaps. Or there are rules for water. Water has to follow these rules. Water always runs downhill. Water vapor travels from a high pressure to a low pressure area. Water vapor travels from warm to cold areas by heat. Water vapor travels from wetter to drier areas by capillary action. As you've seen, water can move in many directions through the building's exterior envelope and inside the building. We control water in a few ways. We design our buildings to shed water from the roof to the footing. The roof isn't waterproof, but it's water resistant, much like your average umbrella. The roof works with gutters, downspouts, and the exterior wall coverings to keep water and moisture away from the inside of the building.